Hey, welcome to Gold's Garage. So today I'm assembling the first of two 400s. The other one's kind of out of the sight of the camera right now. And so this already been kind of a subject of previous videos. So I just put the crankshaft in and I was instructed to start videoing. So the crankshaft's already in. And before we put it in, every dimension clearance on the main bearings and the rod bearings were already checked with dial bore gauge, and I've documented all that, so that's all available. So when I put the crankshaft in, I don't have to do any of that. I know it's ready to go. And in addition to that, I've already mentioned in previous videos, in order to get adequate clearance, this is an Eagle crankshaft and brand new Eagle 400 crankshaft, standard stroke 3.75. And in order to get adequate clearance, I had to mix and match bearings. So typically what I've done is I've used a thou undersized bearing on the top side, and I'm using and that's a Clevite X code bearing, which stands for extra clearance. And the top side, I'm using actually bought an Eagle rotating kit, and the bearings come with it are King bearings, and they're fine. I've used them lots, and they're going to go in the bottom. On the other 400, it's just the other way around, because I got two sets of bearings, two crankshafts, all with the same issue. I need a little more clearance. So I've got 2 thou on the mains and 2 thou on the rods minimum, and I kind of like that. The OEM, for what it's worth, is the minimum is only 0.8 of a thou, and you could actually run that and be within spec. But for a hot rod engine where we're going to pull hard on it, and who knows where it's going to go, what it's going to do, could end up in a drag car, I don't know. So we want at least 2 thou. So that's a good number. Everything is brand new. The crankshaft's brand new. The bearings are brand new. I just put the rear main on and the rear main seal on. And when you do that, I'm not taking it back off, but you got to put a little dab of this stuff, black Permatex on it, just where the two sides of the seal mix. You clock the seal a little bit so it sticks up, say 1/4 to 3/8 of an inch on one side and down on the other side. And when they go together, you don't have a parting line in the seal right at the parting line of the crankshaft. And that usually ensures that you're not going to have a leak or whatever. So I've done that already. And this is the stuff that I use. It doesn't have to be this. Black is supposed to be the best for oil applications. And right now I can't find the lid, but that's okay. We'll keep moving. So the main is in, the rear main is in. I did that first because I wanted to get the seal, the bottom half of the seal was in, and if you rotate the crankshaft, it tends to rotate it out. And we are coating everything with Clevite assembly lube. It's a good practice. Now, 50 years ago, there was no such thing, and engines work just fine. Another thing to note is, even though I do use it, and it's a good practice to use it, when we prime the oil system, a lot of that stuff's going to get pumped out before the engine even starts. But we do that anyway. So all the main bearings are already coated with it. And so we're going to put those on. I take them off in the order that they came off. They're all numbered on the inside. There's a number on the top of the cap as well that's stamped into it. Make sure we have a good clean surface on the parting line. I've already cleaned out all the bolt holes with a light tap. Make sure there's no thread binding. One of the things that you need to know in bolting, you're not just tightening the bolt, you're actually stretching the bolt. And so it's important that when you torque a bolt in place, that if you don't lubricate the threads well and the threads aren't nice and clean and smooth, a lot of the torque that you're applying isn't going to stretch the bolt. It's just going to overcome that friction. So more than half of the torque that you apply goes into friction. So you need to minimize that so that you get the actual stretch on the bolt. And the stretch is like a preload, and that makes sure that unless there's stresses bigger than that stretch after the engine's running, it'll never stretch anymore. And that's always the case. So putting the caps on one at a time here. 4, 3, once again, these are all numbered. There is an arrow on the cap. If anybody has never done this before, there's an arrow on the cap that points to the front. Make sure you get that right, okay? Caps are all pre-lubricated. The bottom half of the bearing is also pre-lubricated, caps going in the right direction. So the safe way to put an engine together is check, 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 and keep checking until you're sure that it's going in the right way. The arrow goes that way. So when we get all done, even though I already did that a number of times, we get the light out and we look. Number 1 and 5 are pretty easy. You can't get them wrong. 2, 3, and 4 look the same. This is because it's a 4-bolt engine. Otherwise, these 1 to 4 would all look the same. But because it's a 4-bolt engine, they look the same. But there's a number stamped. That's a 4, that's a 3, and that's a 2. So I'm sure that I got these caps back in the order that they belong. Bolts going in. Main bearing bolts go in. You dip them in oil before they go in. So bear with me. It's going to take a little while. Some work in this business is a little bit repetitive, and so it's hard to make it all exciting, but I'm trying to do my best here. So long bolts obviously go on the top of the cap, and the short bolts for the 4-bolt main caps go on the side. And I missed one someplace. Where's the other long one go? There it goes. Okay, and then the short ones. Now, one of the practices is torquing a cap at a time and then checking for free rotation when you do that. And I've already had this crank in and out a few times already. I've already done that, so I don't need to this time. And so typically what we'll do to run these down is snug them down with this is just a nut runner, doesn't have any torque to speak of. I need a 5/8. Just run them down. Another thing to check is the vanes all have to go into a registry. And there's a little slot in there where they fit in, and that prevents the main from wobbling from side to side. You have to make sure that it's properly seated into the registry. And that one is kind of not. So I'm going to take the bolts back out. There we go. Now it is. You want that seated. You don't want, when you put the torque on it, to be jamming. You want it to go pull right down, and the registries all look good. That's this corner connection here. Hard to show that on the camera from there. I'm doing this all by myself. No one else is here today, so this is a nut runner. It's probably got less than 25 foot-pounds of torque. So it's just to get the preload down there. Take a quick check. Now, another little handy tool, if you have ever doing this again, you can buy this number of places. Because how do you turn your crankshaft when you're putting the engine together if you don't have another way? So this fits right on the keyway, the same place that the harmonic balancer would fit. And then you can take your 1/2-inch drive ratchet, stick that in like that, turn it over. Now we're not torqued yet, so this doesn't mean too much, but we will torque starting now. So the proper torque for this engine is 80 foot-pounds. And this need to find an 80 foot-pound, 80 5/8. So as we torque them, we start in the middle. That's the way I do it anyways. Start in the middle, set our torque wrench at 80 foot-pounds. If you don't have them, you don't know what the numbers are, a GM manual, you can look it up online. There's a number of ways. I have a manual and I printed out the main torque sheet. Kind of got it memorized by now, but I can show you that. So there's our 80 foot-pounds. You're gonna have a little bit of a torque reaction to it. Get them all snugged down. Oh, I'm missing one. So there we go. Run that guy down. So starting with the middle one, once again, all the clearances have already been checked, so we're not too worried about having any big surprises here, but we will get the torque on it. Starting here. Okay. Still nice. Now, not going to spin as freely with your fingers because this group that we use, this is Clevite. It's pretty thick stuff. It's like 150 grade weight engine oil. It's pretty thick and sticky. So, but it's nice and smooth. You don't feel any resistance at any point. And that shouldn't be surprising because we've already done the clearancing. The crankshaft's brand new. Everything else is. So we go to the next bearing. Get it tightened down. Now, typically on an assembly, I will even write down as I do this, main bearings torque at 10 to 12 on March the 31st, because sometimes I wake up in the morning and I can't remember if I did it or not. So this way I make sure that I didn't forget. So still feels good. So we'll go to the next one. Unfortunately, I already had the seal in when we started. And I remembered I was supposed to be taping this or recording this, so didn't get to show you the details of that. But another thing to note, if you have an old, this is a brand new crankshaft, but if you have an old crankshaft that you've reground, typically where the seal goes is going to be already worn and scratched up, and a lot of times that's why rear main seals leak. You can actually buy an offset seal, and what it does, it moves the seal contact point about 50 thou away from the scratched up part and onto the new part of the crankshaft where you will get a good seal. So that's BS 11829. That's a Felpro part. Pretty sure that's correct from my memory. So back to work. Double check, and then when I do that, typically, because I'm a little bit anal about this kind of stuff, I'll probably check it all again before I put the oil pan on this engine. So there we go. Got that one nice and tight. Just make sure we got it. Didn't miss one. Okay, so back to the front now. Did I do that already? Probably. That's what happens sometimes. I end up. Oh, I didn't. So there we go. I did not do it. So here we go. Okay, how's it turning? Oh, nice. So typically when I get the pistons in it, because the piston is going to add drag, we measure with the torque wrench how much it takes to rotate the rotating assembly with no, lift on the force on the camshaft or anything. And usually it's about 30 foot-pounds to turn everything, and that's somewhat dependent on, probably mostly dependent on the finish on your bore and the piston rings that you're using. If you're using cast piston rings, it might be a little higher. In this case, we're using Molly rings, which are a little smoother, and we're finished. This bore has a 400 grit final finish. So we'll see when we get it together how much torque it takes to turn it. So now we're up to the front one, same thing. For those of you that don't know, this is called a 4-bolt main engine because the center 3 caps have 4 bolts. Typically, most engines, especially back in the day, only had 2, and they only added the 4th bolt on the center 3. If you have a big block, it's got 4-bolt mains on the front and the back. All 5 mains, sorry, are 4-bolt. So there we go. That guy's torqued up. How's it turning? Still turning good. If there was any binding, we would take it apart and find out why. Once again, I've already checked the clearance on these bearings, and I made that a subject of another video. So it's ready to go, and it's ready to assemble. And there we have our 80 foot-pounds. And we go back over them all, just to make sure. Didn't miss one. Front main. 4-bolt main bolts. Crankshaft's installed and turns nice and smooth. So what we would expect. And we're going to keep going. The next I got to do is mount the piston rings on the pistons and start installing pistons, and we will go through the same process on the connecting rods when we get to that point.